Hey guys, so today our topic that we're going to be introducing is how do the senses of hearing and sight work together in the perception of a spoken message? And this topic is presented by Jackson, Elizabeth, and Jack. So the topic of the senses and hearing is basically the phenomenon in which the relationship between visual messages are revolved around the relationship also between skills and the decoding of non-verbal cues in the visual versus audio channels in the brain. And there is a lot of information on this topic. There is also specific information on the ability to sense variation in how somebody feels about you during specific interactions. This could be in person, speaking on the phone, face to face, obviously, texting nowadays. And current published studies on this topic explain the relationship between these things and how someone feels about you during these specific interactions, and as well as the correlation between these trustworthiness, interactions, loyalty, friendliness, and other personal characteristics that nonverbal cues might occur during their speech. And these studies are showing a correlation between many of these things. So our hypothesis for this topic is that there is a correlation between the ability to sense nonverbal cues and the perception of a spoken message. And our results are, I hope, very important because they will help us to get a better understanding of how our eyesight and hearing is able to interpret messages, given that a large part of meaning between unspoken messages can be missed within the tone, body language, and facial expression of the other person. And we hope that these results will allow us to have a better and heightened ability for deaf and blind people to interpret messages with the visual and audible impairments.
Okay, so as far as the methods go for our research proposal, obviously this is the kind of study that is going to need an actual experimental design and not just a observational design. So we will need participants, and for participants, we were thinking about 150. This is because we don't want to spend a ton of our funding on recruiting people, and it can get very expensive to try to monetize participation and compensate people for their participation in a study. So 150 gives us a pretty decent number as far as sample size, and it will not necessarily break the bank to have all these people participate in the study. We additionally were wanting to recruit people between the ages of 18 to 25, and this is for a couple of reasons. First of all, people are generally in pretty much their physical prime as far as processing goes, and their working memory is really good. These people are also a lot easier to recruit because most of them are college students, and they're all young adults who not only will do a lot for a little bit of money and a little bit of compensation, but they're also a lot easier to reach because of things like university channels that would be really good for getting recruitment information out. These participants will be screened for audio-visual limitations such as deafness, partial deafness, blindness, partial blindness, any form of audio processing disabilities, and mental processing speed disabilities. Essentially, we just want to make sure that any condition that these people could have that could interfere with the validity of our study's results, we don't recruit those people and we don't have them participate in the study. As far as materials go, we were going to need video clips with audio and video clips without audio. These video clips will be of people having conversations, and we just want to be really thorough about which stimuli people are actually picking up on. So we want to use video clips with audio and without. We also are going to use audio clips, so just hearing people talking with no video, and headphones so that these audio and video clips are not distorted by any background noise, and we can give our participants the best shot at understanding what these people are saying. And then survey sheets so that they can report what they understand and what they observe throughout the study. As far as how we'll use these materials, our procedure is going to go as follows. So we will obviously need to instruct participants on what they're doing and make sure that we have all of the correct informed consent and, have them understand how to do this so that it's as objective as possible. but we are hoping to have these participants view and or listen to each video clip without audio, and then report on what they think the people in the video are saying with audio, and then report what they think the people are saying, and then the audio clips and report what they think the people are saying. And the reason for this is that we want to make sure that it's not just the audio that people are understanding, but if it's helping to see people move their lips, for example, and or if it can be understood with just moving their lips, we want to really understand that. Additionally, in order to control for body language, which it can be very difficult to find the right videos to control for that, we were going to have lab assistants essentially sit in a room with a window and have participants look in the window to the lab assistants having a conversation with each other. One conversation with body language, with normal expression of body language, and then once with the lab assistants being very stiff and not really giving off any body language at all. And that is so that we understand how much body language plays a role and how we understand tone and expression of things. And again, we'll have the participants report what it is that they understood the conversation was about and what they understood the lab assistants talking about. And hopefully having all of these controls and all of these factors accounted for will help us to understand what exactly the relationship is between this audio visual processing relationship.
Yeah, so like Elizabeth said, we will be collecting surveys in order to get an analysis of the experiment. And those surveys will help us understand how the dependent variable reacts to the independent variable. So the independent variable will be the audio or visual conversations, whether that be in the tapes or the lab assistants engaging in conversation either with body language or no body language, with the subjects observing. And the independent variable will include the nonverbal cues like facial expressions, body language, hand gestures, and any interpretation of anything that is nonverbal or without words, and that's including the tone as well. And so the survey administered will help us interpret how the subjects perceived each conversation, whether that be if they had both audio and visual, or if they were impaired and only had audio or visual. And the results that we get from the survey, we'll be able to interpret those and give a score on a scale of 1 to 10 on how well each group, the mean of that group, interpreted the conversation. So you can see at the graph on the left, an expected result would be that the deaf and blind, when the control group only had either audio or visual, they will interpret the message better than the control group. And that is just with either audio or visual. And that would be, we expect, because of deaf and blind people, that population we assume has heightened awareness with other senses that allow them to better interpret without hearing or without visualizing the conversation. And then we expect that when the control group has both audio and visual to the conversations and to the audio tapes and videos, that they'll be able to accurately interpret the conversation and the overall tone and meaning of that conversation. So the importance of this experiment, it comes down to really will help us understand the role that both sight and hearing play in the interpretation of and perception of language, and how we use nonverbal cues with our eyes, such as body language, facial expressions, hand gestures, how those play a role in interpreting the message of a conversation or the overall tone of something. And these nonverbal cues also include like tonalities, or how the voice the inflection of the voice occurs and how that changes the perception of the language. So anything that is nonverbal or without words, including the tone, and that will better help us understand how those two things, eyesight and hearing, work together in order to perceive the message of a conversation or any type of interaction accurately. And I think another thing that's really important is this experiment will help us better understand how the blind and deaf perceive conversations and how they're able to use, they don't have one sense like hearing or eyesight, how the other senses that they do have will heighten and become more sensitive in order to better interpret conversations or other forms of languages that they have interactions with on a day-to-day basis. And that is our research proposal. Thank you.